Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin Bischoff and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Home Building Hub. You're with Colin and co-host Darren Brennan, as always. And today, Darren, we're going to talk about and educate people on what is a building surveyor and should you choose your own. And I think this is something that people get confused between what is a building surveyor and a building inspector, someone who goes through and you pay to get a report done on the build. A surveyor is not that. So we're going to explain how it works or who they are, how it works, and give you some ideas and understanding. You can walk into your, building process ready and equipped. How you going today, Dezza?
Mate, going very well, thank you. I'm glad I got the mate, the grey tracksuit top and hoodie. We're looking good together here, mate. It's like a uniform today. But I'll tell you what, mate, it's fresh outside. It's early Saturday morning and it's damp as heck and certainly need the trackies on, mate. So we're looking sharp today, ready to roll.
It's quite dark too.
Nice,
right, yeah, compared to normal, but I'm sure that's some of the best quality listening that people would have talking about that right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe we kick off on building surveyors, mate. And why don't you tell us what a building surveyor is?
Right. So a building surveyor is an independent professional. They're responsible for ensuring your home is built in line with all of the codes and the regs. So Building Code of Australia or National Construction Code, the relevant planning and building regulations. That's their job, to make sure your house ticks all the boxes. They assess it. Essentially, they assess your plans up front. In order for you to get to site in the first place, a surveyor must approve those plans. They issue the building permit itself, and then they actually do inspections throughout construction to make sure that the builder has ticked all the boxes. So it's more of a quality assurance or I guess a regulation assurance and compliance process that independently someone does on your behalf, or really in between. So that's what a surveyor is, as opposed to a building. There's lots of terms, Darren, but I think most people call them building inspectors. They are the people that you pay to come through at all stages, or quite often, Darren, most will do it at the PCI stage, most commonly I'd say, practical completion, and they present a list of all the items that they feel are non-compliant, plus all of the cosmetic items that they feel need to be addressed, and they give that report to you, the client, because you've paid for it, and then you give it to the builder, and the builder goes through it and says, okay, we agree with this one, we disagree with that one, and you land on, out of the 25 items, you might get 5 or 10 sorted and everyone's happy. And the surveyor is different because they will approve whether it complies or whether it doesn't. That simple. Yeah. No cosmetics.
For sure. I guess, when you talk about them too, they are an independent professional, and part of their role is to make sure that the home is built in line with the building code, which you mentioned. That it's got to be built in line with the NCC, and they'll look at all that sort of stuff. And obviously, there's changes to these things happening, with some of those regulatory bodies that we spoke about with Keith a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. And they'll also look at relevant planning and building regulations and making sure they comply with those, which is really important, to get that stuff right, in your home, so that, things move forward at a good pace. But also it's holding your builder to account to the law, which is, really important. And throughout the building process, they'll obviously come in and assess at the slab stage. They obviously sign off on your plans for your permit, but they will come in and assess at the slab, the frame, and the final stages, and then issue the occupancy permit as well. So they've got a pretty important role to play throughout the build. So yeah, it's certainly somebody you want to make sure that that's the right person to be dealing with your builder and making sure that's holding them to account. So, and they're there to, as you said earlier, uphold the law. So I guess, Colin, you mentioned about independence, but are they actually independent?
Yes, they are. They're not hired by a builder, and technically they're not hired by the buyer as well, depending how you look at that. But essentially, they are independent. And I think rather than trying to get through the technicalities, an analogy that we've come up with, which is close, it's not exactly perfect, but they're a little bit like an umpire in a game of football, for example. So the rules are already predetermined and established, like the regulations. And I guess their role as the umpire is they don't play for the builder's team. They don't play for the client's team. They are there as the umpire to make sure and enforce that the rules or the regulations have been in play, basically. So that's their role. They are to make sure that the builder is compliant, full stop. So I think technically, Darren, in terms of independence, the fee for the surveyor is included in the contract. So technically, you could say they do represent the client because they're making sure the house is built compliantly. However, they're realistically they're an independent party of both to make sure it's all done and properly constructed within all the rules, the regs, compliance, etc.
And,
Yep.
and they will hold the builder to account as well. If there's something not right, they will often come back, and we see it all the time, Colin, that, if it's at your plan stage and they're issuing a building permit, they'll come back and say, no, we need more information so that we can make sure that this is right. It might be further information on the engineering. It could be other bits and pieces they want to see before they'll sign off on that building permit.
Yeah.
Being part one, we'll see, they'll come out and inspect the slab. There might be something that needs to be adjusted, amended. They'll be looking at all of the reinforcement throughout the slab before it's actually poured and say, is all the steel that's required in there? Is it being attached the way that it's suggested as per the engineering diagrams that they've signed off on? And then if that's the case, then go ahead and pour the concrete. If not, then rectify these works. Likewise, at the frame stage, if there's something not compliant, they will again force the builder to actually rectify those works before they sign off on that. So, and at the final stages, again, they won't issue an occupancy permit without things being the way they need to be compliant. So, they are very, very good in that respect, I guess. And they are, they're not pro builder, they're not pro customer, they're pro upholding the regulations and the law to ensure that, because again, if you think about it, that owner might own this house today, but sell it tomorrow, straight after they've built the place, and that's no longer relevant to the client anymore. But it is certainly relevant to the person who purchases that home,
Yeah.
And ongoing. So yeah, it's really important. One of the questions we often get asked, Colin, is can you choose your own? And the answer to that is yes, you can. And you would fill in what they call a Section 78, which is a part of the Building Act, and you're legally entitled to choose your own building surveyor in Victoria. And we're talking about Victoria only here, but builders cannot appoint one on your behalf unless you've given written authorisation. So as part of the process, if you are choosing to go with the builder's nominated building surveyor, you will have to sign off on the fact that you agree to that happening. Certainly, you've got the choice. You choose it or the builder chooses it. Certainly, the VBA makes it clear that it's entirely up to the owner to make their choice of which way they would rather go, and I guess that'll lead to, do many people appoint their own building surveyor? Colin, maybe you could touch on that one, but it's probably the next line up in the questions that are asked, which way do people tend to go? And what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so I think that we need to make it very clear, as the buyer, it's your choice. You get to choose and you nominate who your surveyor is. If you choose your own, or you can nominate with the builders or choose the builder's nominated surveyor. In our experience, which is mainly, just to be clear, in greenfield homes, new construction greenfield areas, it's actually quite rare for a new home buyer to choose their own surveyor. it happens very rarely. And I think in other building types like inner city renos, customs, like full customs, it might be actually more common potentially. But in our space, I don't see it happening very often at all, Darren. And I think the reality is surveyors are independent, legally bound to uphold the law and make sure everything's compliant. So I guess, as we said earlier, they're not there to side with the buyer and they're not there to side with the builder. They are not there for cosmetic reasons. So when you get a report from a building inspector that's 50 pages long, and it's cost you a couple of grand to get that, or 1,000 or 2,000, they will list cosmetic items. But the surveyor is there to not to address cosmetics, but compliance. So it's really important to understand the difference between the two. They will sign it off if it complies within the regulations. One of the, I guess, reasons people might choose their own is because they've built before and they've had a process with a surveyor that they trust. However, to be honest, most people just stick with the builder's one, knowing that they're independent, and that's the reality. So when you sign your quote off, there's probably going to be a list of, two or three surveyors that the builder puts in front of you, and that you can just select one. You won't even know who they are, really, but knowing that they're independent is really the main reason why people just go with the builder's one. They can't do anything dodgy, really. I mean, I wouldn't say it hasn't happened for sure, but the builder and their reputation and the surveyor and their reputation,
and the surveyor's license.
their license, both licenses are really, reliant upon they're doing their part properly. So a surveyor's not just going to side with the builder and say, yeah, she'll be right, we'll sign it off, because they can, it can come back to bite them very quickly. So just wouldn't do that. So generally, I think, Darren, the people choose the nominated builder's surveyor because they're more familiar with that builder. Their processes, their people, their systems, their timelines actually bolt in a lot easier, and that's a better outcome, in my opinion, for every client. You should choose your builder's nominated surveyors because of those reasons. It's a little bit like, the builder having a set of trades and suppliers they use, and just for one job, they've agreed, which doesn't happen very often, they've agreed to use your electrician or your trade or your supplier. And it's really clunky. It doesn't work because they don't know the process, the people, the system. They ruin the timeline. So it's not an ideal situation. So yeah, definitely. And just an opinion, go with the builder's surveyor is my view. Yep.
Yeah, don't disagree with that, Cole. I guess, some of the impacts of choosing your own would be certainly it's a legal right to do so, but it certainly provides its challenges, as you mentioned. In the event that you do choose your own surveyor, it's important to understand that the costs of that surveyor, and the fees related to getting a building permit, would likely increase. And often what you'll see is that the builder, because they've already factored in a cost into their base home, and they're getting a bulk rate because they're using that surveyor all the time. So the cost to do that's very, often very affordable. They've negotiated a really good deal with that surveyor to do as much work as possible with them. So expect that there's going to be additional costs. You mentioned already, Cole, it can also blow out the time frame. So, expect there to be some additional time frames. And you may even find that the builder in their contract will actually add some additional days to the guaranteed build time, should that be the case as well, just because they're mindful that the process isn't going to follow the same as what it normally would. And it may well take longer to get some of these approvals through. They may not work in the same way, be available at the same time, etc., etc. And it could also delay you getting to site, again, because of their process. The other part that in a couple of occasions that I've seen is it certainly felt like a couple of times that the customer's appointed building surveyor has rubber stamped the plans in almost world record time, which, for a builder that I was at previously was almost questionable whether they were even looking, into the detail that the builder's preferred surveyor was. It was almost a bit of an in-house joke, like, gee, we could use this guy because we get the job done twice as quick kind of attitude. And it was like, wow, did he even look at it? We got it back in an hour and a half. That'd normally take a week and a half, and with a whole lot of questions along the way. So,
Yep.
And again, that's not a lot of these things, a lot of these regulations are up to interpretation. So that's not suggesting that they're operating illegally. It's just that they may well have interpreted the same thing in a different way. So, be mindful of that, I guess.
Yeah.
What are your final thoughts there, Cole?
Yeah, so final thoughts. As we said, we recommend just going with the builder's nominated one. It's, as we said, independent. That's what they are. They've got their own license, their own reputation on the line. They're not going to side with the builder, not going to side with the client. So remember and reminder that they're not there for cosmetics. They're there for compliance. If you're considering your own surveyor, actually, either way, if you're going to choose a builder's nominated surveyor or choose your own surveyor, we suggest you give them a call. They're publicly available businesses. You can just call their reception and say, hey, I'm building with, John Smith Constructions. They've nominated you as one of their surveyors. Can you just tell me a little bit about your business and your history? So I've got some comfort in nominating, or choosing their nominated or preferred nominated surveyor. If that gives you comfort, then just do that. It's not something that's commonly done, to be honest, Darren, but I don't think there'd be any issue with that, because I think the feedback you get from that surveyor will still be comforting and it'll give you confidence. Just choosing one that's independent of your own decision for the sake of doing it, I think it's going to cost you more money. I know it'll cost you more money. I know it'll cost you more contract days, because these other ones, they have pre-agreed timeframes. So it's like, we already have worked with this person for many years. So the reality is, we know the system. When they say this is ready to review, I promise them a turnaround time of 5 days. And then vice versa. Whereas it's a new, unknown, independent surveyor, none of that is pre-established, and therefore the builder has to give you extra time, extra costs, and extra, delays really to site start to completion and every stage through the whole process. So I think it costs you in time and it costs you in money, and it's worth talking to the initial nominated surveyors, the couple of them that the builders already recommended. That's my thought.
Mate, great wrap up, mate. I think it's certainly an interesting episode for people to have a good listen to. So we certainly hope you take value out of the episode and look forward to hearing from you guys. I'll talk to you guys on the next one.
Yep. Excellent. Any questions, just go to homebuildinghub.com.au, feedback, comments, all that stuff on there. And please just leave us a 5-star review on the platform you're on. That'll be very, very good. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. And just our disclaimer, whilst we're all about providing value to you, this podcast should not be considered as legal or financial advice. It contains general information only, and you should seek out independent professional advice on your personal situation before making any legal or financial decisions.
1